عزيزي ستيفن.
Hello.
صباح الخير.
صباح النور.
ازيك؟
أنا كثير happy, thank you very much.
You know, like the main idea why we are recording today, or why actually I've been interested in recording today. I think we've been talking about it this morning, which is since we are living in Europe, people usually talk about integration and how it's important for Arab people who are living in Europe to understand more about the European culture. But my interest or my aim is to explain more about the Arab culture, language, food, travel, etc. So what I'm trying to do here is to invite other people who are related to the Arab world, but they are still living in Europe or have more to do with the European culture. So to have some sort of reverse integration. So it's not like I'm introducing my culture, but it is the Europeans who are introducing my own culture from the European perspective. And I believe I'm gonna call it Café of ألف ليلة وليلة. مقهى ألف ليلة وليلة. With hope that it will be ألف episodes and episode 1001 episode. Let's hope.
Okay.
So I'm starting with you today,
Right.
as you are one of my best friends.
Okay.
So yeah, just can you introduce yourself and say something about yourself, please?
Okay, so I'm Stephen Griffith. I'm a retired Anglican priest, and I spent 10 years living in Jordan and Syria. And I'd been traveling in the Middle East for many, many years. I first went to what we call the Holy Land. When I was a 13-year-old, I'd never travelled outside of Britain. I'd never even been to London. And so my first experience of abroad was Jerusalem. And Jerusalem in those days was in Jordan and was this astonishing Middle Eastern city. And
in which year was it?
So this was 1963.
Okay.
This is really long ago. And one of the things that I remember about it was watermelons.
Okay.
Because I'd never had watermelons. British cuisine in those days was even more limited than it is now. And we had, it was August, so it was hot. We needed lots of liquid. And we would have watermelons. I'd never tasted anything like this. And outside the Damascus gate in Jerusalem, Bab al-Amud, there were these huge piles of watermelons. And of course, since then, the watermelon, because of its colours, has become a symbol of Palestine.
But back then, there was no watermelon in Europe?
No. Well, not in Britain. How would you get them to Britain? And why would you get them to Britain? We had different things to eat. And yes, so in a sense, watermelons say you need to be drinking lots of water because it's hot.
And do you know what's called in Arabic?
Batich, that's right. Because at the moment my mind is mukh batich. But it was a tremendous joy, and Jerusalem, of course, it was in those days this Arab city. Jews had been expelled in 1948, and you had this huge mixture of Muslims and Christians, and most of the people I came across, of course, were Christians because this was a pilgrimage, and the result was that my experience of the Middle East wasn't dominated by the assumption that the Middle East is and the Arab world is Muslim. It was much more complex than that, much more plural than that. Yeah.
So we could say this is the first interaction with the Arab world for you, 1961 or
63.
1963. I mean, yeah, the year where my father was born.
Yes.
In which month, maybe?
August.
No, that was October.
Yeah.
All right. So before you have never been to, or it was not in your mind that you would travel or you would live for many years in one of the Arab countries.
No, but this planted a seed. Later on, when I was in theological college. So I was 21, 22. I spent a term again in Jerusalem. There's an Anglican college there that does short courses. And I did an intensive month at St. George's College, Jerusalem. Now, by this time, Jerusalem, of course, was occupied by the Israelis. And so I met people who had not, who, when I'd been in Jerusalem previously, they had been Jordanian citizens. Now they found themselves Jordanian Palestinians occupied by Israel, and the experience of the invasion had been quite traumatic for Christians as well as for Muslims. And in a way, having been quite pro-Israeli, I certainly stopped being pro-Israeli. But also
haven't just started yet.
Yeah, what I also loved was the archaeology. We were taught a lot about archaeology, and I've done quite a bit of archaeology since, including in Israel. And so my experience then was a different experience.
But how did you get the chance actually to work there? You were so pretty young. Right?
I was working as a school chaplain. I had long holidays and good pay, and that meant that I could travel. And having spent a bit of time in Jerusalem, I used to go back, and particularly in Jerusalem, I spent a lot of time in Jerusalem, and then expanded. And I worked on a couple of archaeological digs in Israel proper, and also taught for one summer in a 100% Muslim town in Israel, so they were all Israeli citizens. And I was quite shocked by the apartheid then, and felt a strong sense that I wanted to work in the region. And so when I was 42 or something, I then was appointed to have a job in Jordan, where I was a priest there, working for the foreigners in the local Anglican church.
Yeah. So before I move to the second part or the second question, what are the countries, or how many countries, Arab countries, you've been to?
Right, I've been to Egypt lots of times. I've spent a lot of time in Palestine, including Gaza, Lebanon, and I worked in Syria and Jordan. I've also been briefly to Iraq and Bahrain, Tunisia and Morocco in North Africa. So quite a number. But not the Gulf, really.
So if I say, what did the most thing capture your mind, your heart, what would you say? I mean, what is the most thing you really appreciate in the Arab world? It could be culturally, it could be food, it could be anything. The most thing whenever you say Arab world comes to your mind.
I think the history is really interesting. I am at my heart, I'm a historian, and the history is so interesting and complex, and because especially that sort of area from Antakya down to Gaza has been this bridge between Africa, Asia, and Europe. I think there have been so many peoples and armies and conquerors moving through that here you have so much history of people conquering and people building, and of course the architecture. Some of the architecture is absolutely wonderful, but also the stuff that has simply disappeared, and that too is interesting. So I like that, but I just like the people. The people. The thing about I think Arabs in that area is they're not always nice to each other, but they're certainly always very nice to foreigners. So I've always found local people to be very friendly.
Do you, as a European, do you think there's something actually people misunderstand or about the Arabic culture or the Arab world?
Well, I think simply using the word Arab is a real problem, because you start in Morocco, and you end up in Oman.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they are completely different places.
Mm-hmm. But they're still Arab countries. In a way,
Only because they speak Arabic. That's the only thing that unites them.
Mm-hmm.
The Arab world, I mean, I've been to a lot of places, is so diverse. As you know, I learned a bit of Arabic, and I learned, Palestinian Arabic. And I go 100 kilometers to Egypt, and I don't understand anything
At all.
because Egyptian Arabic is so different.
Zaylek.
And Hager, I don't understand these things. And the culture there. I spent 5 years in Syria. Syria is the country I know best. And it is a very plural country because it is this bridge. Mm-hmm. And, if you look at people's faces, you have got fair-haired people and dark-haired people. You've got people who are from the Balkans. You've got people who are from Africa, as well as Turkmen. And it is a very, very mixed population in a way that Egypt isn't. Egypt is either sort of Coptic or Arab. And although you've got two traditions, and in the south, of course, Nubian, Black African, but you haven't got a wide spectrum of population there. And I think Syria was really wonderful because you did have this plurality. And although the government was pretty bad, because this was before the war, although the government was pretty bad, the fact was that I was there mainly working with Christians. Most of my friends were Muslim. But I also had Druze friends and Alawite friends. And of course, there are Kurds who are Muslim, but are culturally so very different from Arabs, that it is that plurality that I really enjoyed in Syria. And to a certain extent, you get that in Jordan. Jordan is, again, all these countries are artificially created. Of course, the border is in the wrong place. But where I lived in Jordan, it was the north. You go 150 kilometers south, and you're in the Hijaz. It's culturally completely different. And so when you ask me about the Arab world, I say, well, all of these Arab worlds, or this plurality, which makes it very rich. And I spent a bit of time working also in Lebanon when I was based in Damascus.
In the church as well.
In the church. And Lebanon, of course, unlike Syria, is very unhappily plural. People do not get on with each other. And you talk to somebody and they define themselves by which ethno-religious group they don't like. Because they will say, I don't like the Maronites, or I don't like the Palestinians, or I hate whoever it happens to be. Whereas in Syria, it wasn't like that. I think Syria was a lot more integrated, and of course, the government pretended it was more integrated than it was. But I did feel that it didn't matter when I was talking to somebody what their sect or ethnic background was. We were all human, but they were all Syrians.
Back again to Palestine, where you started working there. How long did you work there? How many years?
So I didn't work in Palestine. I visited a lot. I volunteered a bit. So I did a month or more in al-Fahim, which was a very poor, rough city, because the Israeli state underfunds the education, for instance, and the healthcare for Palestine, for Arab Israelis, as they call them. Lovely people, wonderful students, but it's a rough place, and it's got a huge issue with crime. And that's the place I spent, more time working with local people, other than archaeological digs.
Can you explain more how it was back then? Was it the situation quite hard, difficult, as we see nowadays, or it was not that bad as it is today? However, it was only like 15 or 20 years after 1948.
Right. So my first spending a lot of time was from about 1984. So this is now. So the occupied territories have now been occupied for a long time, for a young person's lifetime. When I first started going there in the 80s, I had Palestinian friends in Jerusalem who had Israeli friends, Jewish Israeli friends. And I think there was a lot of that going on. I went by bus through Gaza to Egypt. Oh yeah,
I haven't seen that before.
And I stayed a couple of times in Gaza, and Gaza was a seaside part of Palestine that was not rich at all, but it wasn't traumatized. And then in the 80s, the Israeli state did a lot of work getting new immigrants. There were lots from Ethiopia and a lot of Russians. And a lot of the Russians, many of whom pretended to be Jewish and weren't, a lot of Russians came and they were fascist. They were hard right, anti-communist people. And they brought the fascism with them into Israel. It was a fascism that really, I don't think, was mainstream until the mid-80s in Israel. And so there was this change so that friends of mine, Palestinian friends of mine in Jerusalem, no longer had Jewish friends because there was this apartheid that developed. And it just got worse and worse. And it became a very unpleasant place. And then, of course, Israelis started building separation walls. And there were these huge settlements being built, which was stealing Palestinian land, which was quite a new thing. So the 80s was a dramatically bad time for anybody who wanted a peace. Yeah.
I think usually, historically, it takes time until people get in a time or in a period of life where it is peaceful. I remember back in the days where I used to study in Al-Azhar University, I used to learn Hebrew as a second language. There was a professor who passed away, unfortunately. His name is Sami Mandur. No, Sami Imam. Sami Imam was really kind, gentle professor. He used to teach us the history of Palestine and the Hebrew history, etc. And one of the days I showed to him my aggravation, I would say, or like my frustration about the situation. And he said, well, 50, 80, or even 100 years of what's happening historically is not really bad. You see? I mean, what has been happening is really, really worse than 100 years. But it takes time until people reach a point where it should be, it is the time where everything should get settled.
Yes, I think he was the old school who'd lived through that earlier period when there were genuine attempts by Israelis and Palestinians to have a society which lived together. But I don't think that's the case because it is I don't really want to talk about Israel, but Israel is a settler colonial state, and more people are arriving there as settlers. And being British, I mean, I'm aware of British history in creating colonial states, and in order to create a colonial state, you have to get rid of the native population or subdue them. And I'm quite depressed about that. But let us move on from such depressing things.
Yes, please. Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, I would like to play a game with you. Since you've been, of course, more than me, since you've been to many Arab countries.
Yeah.
So I would like you to pick one word or a sentence for every single country. Or we could play together to the countries I've been to. Okay, let's start with Egypt, Masr. In a sentence or in a word, anything comes to your mind, how would you describe it?
The land of the river.
Oh, how lovely. Okay. Which, Palestine or Palestine?
broken.
الأردن جردانيا.
Urdun.
الأردن.
Jordan is astonishing because it survives, and I can't work out why. We need to talk about Jordan more. Okay,
Alright.
but it is the survivor.
Okay, cool. Syria.
Plural.
Right. العراق. Iraq. Yeah.
Lost opportunities. I
Okay.
think. Yeah, but yeah.
Where else you've been to?
Lebanon.
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 Great food, awful people.
Sorry, he said that. I didn't say that. All right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, divided people, I think,
Alright,
is what I mean by that.
Yeah. All right.
It's always been a place where people dislike each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why it's always unhappy.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I see. Okay. Tunis.
Rich in history,
Oh, lovely.
and like Italy. I keep on. When I was there, I thought I'm in Italy. It was because it's very close.
الجزائر. Algeria.
I haven't been to Algeria. I've been to Morocco, Maghreb.
المغرب.
It's wonderful architecture.
Yeah.
And surprisingly rich culturally. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else we have missed? Libya? Have you been
No,
to Libya?
I also spent a month in Bahrain.
Suspended.
I spent a month in
I thought you
Bahrain.
got suspended.
No, I got spent a month, and it was. It's not worth mentioning.
Okay. Right. I mean, one word. Can you describe it in one word?
For
Bahrain.
oil.
All right. Okay.
That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Gulf countries.
That's the only Gulf
yeah,
country I've
yeah.
been to. Yeah.
All right. Any other countries we have missed?
Nope.
All right.
That's all.
Cool. You haven't got the chance to be in Saudi Arabia?
No.
Or
no.
you wouldn't?
It
like
was. No, I'd love to go. Actually, I'd love to go. It is one of the things I really would like to do because there are lots of interesting things there.
All right.
And it is now. It wasn't possible before.
Yeah.
Because their visa regime was very strict, and that has changed. And I'd be fascinated to go there. Although the Arab country I want to go to, or the two I want to go to, are Algeria, but also Oman. Yeah.
All right.
Jordan. I need to talk about Jordan.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So, the first Arab country I lived in.
Yeah.
Was Amman, Jordan, and this was before there was this huge immigration, mainly from the Gulf, mainly of Palestinians, and it was a wonderful thing because I'd been there when I was a boy, and I'd been back on a holiday, and it has historically the most wonderful places. I think the most impressive place historically in the whole of the region, even more than Luxor, is Petra, or Bethra, which really is wonderful. But I was very lucky because in my congregation was an old British military man, Colonel Tony Gardner. His grandson is now the King of Jordan. And in those days, his grandson wasn't going to be the King of Jordan because King Hussein's brother was going to be. And I got to know young Prince Abdullah well because Abdullah's grandmother died, British, and I did the funeral and spent a lot of time with Abdullah's mother and with his grandfather, and got to know him and so had. The great word is wasta. The Arab world, like lots of the world, depends on connections. And the wonderful thing is I had this tremendous wasta. I had connections. And if I needed anything, I could get it. And I never used it.
Oh.
because I didn't need to. And of course, it's a very corrupting system, but it was really lovely sort of thinking, oh.
But back then you didn't realize that you have
I didn't realise how much wasta I had, but I did know that if I was in trouble or if I needed something, I could go to the family, and I learnt a lot about how society worked. One of the things that the British were doing, they were funding some medical work among the very poor Bedouin. And in Jordan, the Bedouin have quite a high status because it's a very Bedouin country. Whereas in Syria, the Bedouin are considered sort of low, and the city people are the important ones. But in Jordan, the Bedouin were respected highly, but they were still poor, a lot of them. And there was one day that the Lord Mayor of London was making a visit to Jordan, and the ambassador said, well, the ambassador's wife, who was a physiotherapist, said, would I like to come with them to a project, but also take them to an archaeological site that I knew very well. So I did the archaeological site, but also visited this project, and it was very poor people who were Bedou, and they were all married. They all married their cousins, and they were having serious health issues because of this, and genetic issues. But the thing that I remember most, there was a princess from the family and from the court, and she was there with us, and all the people would come to her with a written letter, a petition. Because the way things work is that a member of the royal family goes to a village, the people all say, could you get my son into university, or could you get, we need a well in our village, or whatever. And I'd never seen this function, and so I said to Princess Majda, she was actually Swedish, but had married into the Iraqi royal family, as it happens. But I said to Princess Majda, she said, well, we go back, and I and my staff go through all of these petitions and deal with them. In Christianity, there is, especially Catholic Christianity, there is this concept of praying to the saints. Praying to the saints is exactly that process. You give a petition to a member of the royal family, to a saint, so that they will give it to God. And it's exactly the same model. And I think one of the great things that I discovered in my time in the Middle East is from various social, political and religious practices, I suddenly understood things that we do in Christianity that I never quite understood why we do it. Because they come from practices that we no longer have within our normal practice. But Jordan was very interesting, and I loved visiting the archaeological sites and had lots of good friends. But Jordan is a country in which half the population are refugees
from
Palestine.
Okay, speaking of Jordan, so if you could choose the most lovable city, and which city you would like to visit, so you need to pick two cities, which one you like the most, and which one you would love the most to visit.
That I haven't visited?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I really want to go to Fez in Morocco.
Oh, okay.
Of all the places, which surprises me. I think it is now possible to visit Medina.
Yes,
but I'm not sure. But I'm not sure
to be inside the Masjid al-Nabawi.
But I can't do that, can I?
Yeah.
But
you are not allowed to get into the masjid.
That's right. So
in the city, in the Medina,
well, I don't want to do that. So
you can make Umrah.
I think Oran in Algeria sounds a wonderful city. When COVID happened, I read Albert Camus' novel The Plague, which is set in Oran. So I thought, oh yes, this sounds great. Damascus I loved, but the greatest city in the Levant was Aleppo, Halab. And I'm not sure what its condition is now. It suffered very badly under Assad and Putin. A lot was destroyed, but I've seen pictures recently that make it look a bit more hopeful. And Aleppo is my favourite city. So when I was in chaplain in Damascus, I had a church there, so a community, and who were international English speakers. But once a month I would go to Aleppo. And in Aleppo there's an old late 19th century hotel, the Baron Hotel. Aleppo has a big Armenian population. And the builders of this 19th century hotel were Armenians. Mazlumian. So
That means?
Refugee or something.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Mazlum. That means the one who doesn't get his right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the Mazlumians, they built this hotel, and the owner, by the time I started going there, was a British woman who'd married one of the Mazlumians, and I used to stay for free in the Baron Hotel.
What's that?
Well, no, because she was a member of the church, and it was not a smart hotel anymore. It had been smart in the 1930s and had not improved, but it was quite romantic. But I spent a lot of time in Aleppo, and there was a wonderful Syrian Orthodox Archbishop, great scholar, very highly educated and cultured, which is another thing I think we need to talk, that people forget how cultured, especially places like Syria were and have been for a long time, and people imagine that everybody, that the Arabs are Bedouin and uneducated, and of course the great cities of Syria and Cairo and so on are these places of great culture. Anyway, so there was my friend Bishop Johanna Ibrahim, and I used to visit him, and sadly at the beginning of the civil war he was kidnapped with the Greek Orthodox Bishop of Aleppo. They were trying to get some priests released who'd been captured by somebody, and it seems that they were taken to Damascus and murdered, and so which is very sad. But I used to meet these wonderful people in Aleppo, and in the 19th century, people wouldn't go to Jerusalem or Damascus; they would go to Aleppo. Aleppo and Cairo were the two great cities of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Yeah,
and so Aleppo is that city. It is.
I've never been there, but I would love to.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, can you also, right? Let's pick another city that is not common or not popular as Cairo, as Aleppo, or some other city. They are really common to the people who are interested. I think you mentioned that you've been to many other cities in Egypt and many other cities in some other countries, but they were not really known.
Well, because Jordan is not a land of cities.
Yeah.
And the only real city in Jordan is Amman.
Yeah.
And there's Aqaba in the south. So I wouldn't go to a city in Jordan. There are ruined cities that are wonderful.
I think when we were in Cairo together, well, we should mention how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
But when we met in Cairo and I was helping you to get into the train station, you were going somewhere.
I was going to Beni Suef.
Yeah, before talking about Beni Suef,
right,
please mention how we got to know each other.
Okay, so I was trying to get this very complicated journey. I needed to go to Beni Suef and then from Beni Suef to Luxor. And of course, I couldn't explain it. And anyway, you got it sorted out. So that was a wonderful start to our friendship.
But I was quite fascinated. I was like, why in the world this European guy would like to go to Beni Suef? I myself wouldn't decide to go.
Of course.
Probably because I'm living there. I'm living in Egypt, and it's not quite fascinating.
So I'd been working as a volunteer, talking for a Christian charity called Embrace the Middle East. They had funded some of the work I did in Syria because I did work with refugees, Sudanese refugees, which they funded. And so I used to go around churches talking about various projects, and I'd been to the Lebanon with them, and I went to Egypt with them and saw some of the fantastic projects. Like, you know, in parts of Cairo, there are the Christians they collect all the rubbish, the Zabaleen, and we looked at the work that's doing with them, because they're hardworking people, but they live in sort of this smelly place, but there are projects to educate them, and there was another project, a set of projects actually, in Beni Suef, which is south on the river. It's the widest point of the Nile anywhere, apparently. And I'd been there before, and I knew there was somebody there, and I wanted to meet him again. And so I went again to see him, and but the nice thing in Beni Suef was actually these projects, because they were giving small loans, and this was mainly to Muslims. And I remember going to a barber shop, and you know,
you go to the barber shop.
We looked at this. Of course I do. But you know, he was so thrilled that he'd been given this small loan, and was able to set up, because of course, you know, people are much more concerned about their hair in the Middle East than we are in Britain, I think. But Beni Suef was a very interesting place. But yes, there are lots of places you could spend. I mean, there are places in southern Jordan, like Kerak. Kerak has a huge Kerak has a huge Crusader citadel, and it's got a small town there, and what is really interesting about these places in Jordan is that there is, although obviously it's majority Sunni Muslim, this is Hijaz, there are still significant Christian populations there, and they've been there forever, really. And I think one of the questions you've got is, how do people misunderstand the Arab world? Well, first of all, when I was last in Morocco, you know, none of the people I met were Arab. They were all Berber and Amazigh, as they call themselves. And I remember once getting a taxi in Damascus, and I said to the taxi driver, "Oh, where are you from?" And because that's what I always do. And he said, "Oh, I'm from Hasakeh." And I said, "Oh," I said, "You're Kurdish." He said, "Oh, yeah, I'm Kurdish." I said, "Are you Arab?" "Oh, yes, I'm Arab." Well, because he has to be Arab, because he's Syrian, you see, and this is the Syrian Arab Republic of Bashar al-Assad and all that sort of thing. But of course, the Kurds aren't Arab. You know, until you change your definition of what Arab is, and before Islam arrived in modern Syria, there were Arab Christian tribes. So, and there was a bishop. We know there's a bishop in the 5th century called Bishop George of the Arabs, and the idea that Arab equals Muslim. It's simply a complete misunderstanding, and that the Arab world is very mixed and very plural, and therefore very rich. And of course, in Germany, one of the things that happened, this is not quite Arabs, but when the guest workers came from Turkey, a lot of them were Christian. They were Syriac Christians coming from Eastern Turkey, and just because you're Turk doesn't mean you're Muslim. You know, and
just being an Arab doesn't mean
that's right. Yeah. So these things are not coterminous. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So let's move on a bit more. So speaking of Arab or being Arab, would like to talk about the experience of learning the Arabic language or the language. Yeah, you mentioned at the very beginning that you know some Arabic. I'm not quite sure how good you are. I mean, we talk a bit in Arabic, like saying hi.
And then Sith Koshi.
All right. I would like you to share with me your experience, please.
Right.
Generally, the most difficult situations and how exactly you got to learn the language.
The first time I started learning Arabic was a BBC radio program called Get By in Arabic, which was Egyptian Arabic. And I remember being in Cairo and being able to order a drink. And that was about it. I'd like a cup of tea, please.
بالعربي.
Yes, and I can't remember how I said it because it's Egyptian. I've forgotten.
أنا عايز
شاي, I think. Yes. Anyway, so when I was in Jordan, I'd been teaching in the Anglican school for a year, and my Arabic was terrible. I had very, very little Arabic. I could read slowly, but that was about it. And so I did an intensive course of one semester. If I'd have done 4 semesters, I would have been fluent. So I understand a quarter of everything. But it was a really good course, and it taught you Amiye, spoken Arabic, not the formal Arabic. And I loved it. It was very hard work. But in the evening, I would wander downtown, which was very close to where I lived, and just chat to people. And there were lots of Iraqi refugees there. So I was learning Palestinian Arabic, really, Jordanian Palestinian Arabic. But the people I met, a lot of them were Iraqis who were refugees. This is after the first Gulf War. And they would say things like shlonak, which is how are you, but it literally means what's your color. And they actually use it in Syria, but a bit. But it was completely not what we were taught. Kif halak, which is the very sort of Jordanian thing to say. And I loved learning Arabic. I've got a good ear. So I sound good. I don't necessarily understand much. And because I haven't been living there for 20 years, I've forgotten so much, but I really enjoyed learning Arabic and being able to to go into the greengrocers, the khudraji, and ask, I'd like a kilo of carrots. So I knew the words for all these things. You see. And that was just so nice. And be able to visit a village and say, how are you? And one of the great things about Arabic is that when you meet somebody, you have all these little formulaic greetings. And I think Jordan and Syria were particularly rich in these.
Right.
And you could you'd say, how are you, 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 in 7 different ways.
Can you give some examples, please?
مرحبا, كيفك, شو أخبارك, كيف صحتك, كيف عيلتك, all of these things.
Egyptian way?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
well, I don't understand that stuff. But also you have these little rituals so that when you go to the barber in Jordan, he's supposed to say to you when you finish, Naiman, and you reply, Alayhi Namalek, which I loved doing because it's just this. It means I've finished cutting your hair. That's all it means, really. Although all of these things are about God. May God bless you in some way or the other. And in Syria, when the boy brings you a cup of flowers tea, it's just wonderful. He puts it on your table and you say, Yislam uidek, may he bless your hands. And he would say, uidek, and your hands. And, we don't know what to say in English. Just say thank you, or cheers, or something empty. But these lovely formulaic things. And Arabic is full of these formula. And you can spend a lot of time not actually saying anything, but communicating. And I love that, and learning all of these for different times, like when somebody has died and going to the meet the family and give your condolences. There were particular things you would say which I have now completely forgotten. But when I moved to Damascus, I found a teacher whose name was Qutayba Mardam Bey. And Qutayba, his grandfather had been Prime Minister of Syria. And he lived in a wonderful old house. He wasn't a very good teacher, but I used to go to his house simply because the room in which he taught was full of old books and newspapers, and it was a beautiful, the room of an educated upper class Syrian politician from the 1930s, and it was just wonderful. Yes, I'm not sure he taught me a lot, but I enjoyed it.
Have you been interested maybe in learning different dialects? I know you've been reading a lot about different dialects and the theory of the Arabic language, or generally about the languages, specifically about Arabic.
No, because I'm no longer living there. It's become sort of it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
But certainly, if were I to live in Egypt, I would certainly want to speak Egyptian mostly.
It would be quite difficult, but wish you all the best.
But the thing is that Arabs everywhere understand Egyptian because they all watch Egyptian movies.
Yeah, correct.
And it doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah. All right. Do you think actually the languages or the language, our language, Arabic language, shape the way how we see the world and how the world see us? You think?
Languages, I think, reflect so much about a culture. I mean, this thing about all these greetings have God in them. It's very difficult being an atheist in the Arab world. You might not be a very keen Christian or Muslim or Yazidi, but you're always, God is always somewhere in your language, and I think it does that. One of the interesting things is that when I talk about in Arabic, if I want to talk about God, I will say Allah. But Allah is simply the Arabic word for God. In the West, what has happened in translation is that people turn the word Allah into a proper name for God, as though this is his name. And therefore, people writing in English will, about an Arab thing, will use the word Allah, whereas they should just say God, because it is trying to say that this is a different God from our God. And I try to say no, God is God, and even though Muslim and Christian will understand God differently, but it is still the one God that we're talking about. But of course, one of the problems of Western power is the influence of Western thought on Islam, which has been very detrimental because it has taken what was a very broad and flexible, pragmatic and nuanced religion, and you get this Salafi and Wahhabi religion, which is hard and inflexible and cold, and lacks all that ambiguity that is integral to Islam, I think. And I think a lot of it is partly because, for instance, a lot of the hardline stuff comes out of India, and it was the Indian response to the British, and they were trying to use Western ideas because they felt that actually we are inferior as Muslims because we have been defeated, and therefore we must use Western philosophy as though it were better, and Western philosophy isn't any better, and sometimes it's just not very good at all. But I think it's the influence of the French and the British have been very detrimental on Islam, as it has been, I think, on Middle Eastern Christianity too. Yeah.
Before moving on to the next question, there's something maybe I would like to share it with you. Since I've been teaching Arabic for foreigners or non-Arabic speakers at the very beginning in English, and then since I moved to Germany, people are interested in learning Arabic, so German people, so I teach them. And the first thing we learn after learning the letters and alphabet, starting teaching them simple words, simple sentences. For example, ازيك, كيف حالك, and the reply is alhamdulillah. So that means thank God. Usually in English, or even in German, you would say es geht mir gut, or I'm doing fine. But in Arabic, you just say alhamdulillah.
That's right, yes.
So I have to explain more and more many sentences that Arabs use containing the word God, but it doesn't have to be religious. Even Christians use the word alhamdulillah. So
Absolutely.
if you're greeting
Yes.
somebody in
Yes,
Egypt
yes.
or even in other country, you say Alhamdulillah,
Yeah,
كيف
yeah,
حالك,
yeah.
كيفك,
Alhamdulillah.
you say Alhamdulillah. They might not be even religious. Even an atheist, I mean,
Yes, well, I was taught by evangelical Christians
yeah,
in Gili, and they would, because they would try to move away from that because that's Islamic in their idea. They would say Nashkarab.
نشكر الرب.
You see, so thanks the Lord.
We're still the same.
Yeah, which is the same thing, but it was still the same concept.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But I often say, in Britain, we used to, if a village was going to have a fete, a festival, they would say, and this will be in such and such a field, weather permitting. And I often say that when Muslims say, Inshallah, it's the same as the British saying weather permitting. It's just a generalized phrase. Yeah.
So let's try to speaking of the Arabic language, let's try to choose a few words you really love the most or you find interesting in Arabic language for you. Like, yeah, I remember yesterday when we were having lunch together, you mentioned the story of ads and adas. That was just an example.
Oh, yeah.
That was just an example. I would appreciate if you just mentioned that story for you, how you present it,
Okay.
and some other words you can suggest.
Right. So first of all, when you've got a pair of glasses, this is, what is this?
بالعربي or
Arabic.
in Arabic? عدسة.
Adasa. And I was having lentil soup, which is
Ads.
ads. It's the same word.
Yeah.
And of course, lens and lentil, it's the same word.
In English,
so in many different cultures, because a lentil looks like a lens, it's got the same word. In fact, I think lens probably comes from lentil rather than the other way around. The problem with Arabic, it's got, because Arabic has all these very clear structures and the way a verb sort of mutates is there are strict formulae which is not like French or English, and I really enjoy the way in which that happens. But individual words, I don't know. I just think they're just. Yes. The thing is, yes, I think Arabic is essentially a language of poetry. And I think this is where I failed completely, because I wanted to enjoy Arabic music, and I do not like Arabic music. Most Arabic music is about song, and songs are words. And if you don't understand the words, you're in trouble.
Most likely, but not every.
I think classical music, certainly. But I think the poetry of the Arabic language is really, really important. And of course, Arabic plays on words. And because we don't have the sound in English, when you want to talk about going for a bath, to the hammam,
bathroom.
One of the lovely things in Damascus was going to the what we would call a Turkish bath, the Arabic bath, the hammam. And I just loved this place. But there is also a thing called a pigeon, which is the hammam.
Yeah, hammam. Not hammam.
But it's not. But they're very similar if you say them quickly.
Yeah, correct. True.
And you can get these things wrong. And there's a response in Jordan, Syria, which goes on your heart, which is ala qalbak. And of course, the British don't hear this k, they hear a k. And ala qalbak isn't on your heart, it's on your dog, which is not quite the same thing. So, but you can play with these things, and you can joke around with these similarities. And I think Arabic is such a rich language, and I've always enjoyed playing around with by sort of almost misunderstanding things.
If you are tired, we can have a break, or if you just I enjoy talking to you always.
Carry on.
Carry on. Okay, just one more.
Yes, one more question. One more question.
No, I mean, for me, it's about, yeah, I mean, to be honest, the main idea of having such podcasts or recording, I would say, it's just, I like to invite people that I enjoy talking to about my own culture. So we could be talking for hours and hours about culture, Arabic countries, Arabic language, etc., and Arabic books, authors, etc. But I was thinking, why not we record that and try to share such experiences with other people? That's why actually that was the main point and inspiration to have such podcast, such idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So some other questions I still have in my mind. Are you in some way or another emotionally connected to the Arab world?
Oh. Oh, God.
No?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Um, traumatically.
Yeah.
Traumatically. Because most of the time, stuff that happens in the Arab world is bad.
Sorry.
And it's not your fault. It's what other people have done. But I've watched, as I mentioned, my friend, the Archbishop of Aleppo, being killed, and I've got people I know in Gaza, and I mean, yesterday I was talking to somebody. I send some money every month to him, and he's ill and he's hungry and emotionally, I don't think the word emotionally covers how I feel about it. I have a profound love for certainly my bit of the Arab world, Syria and Jordan, Palestine, and it's almost inexpressible because also when you go to another culture, you will have found this. When you go to another culture, you discover stuff about your own culture. Why do we do this? Because we have a whole set of assumptions, don't we, in our own cultures. This is what you do. And you go to another culture and they do something completely differently. Well, why don't we? And it helps you question your own culture, but also your own faith. And I mean, I'd been teaching Islam for years in secondary school before going to move to the Middle East.
You?
Yeah, so because I was a teacher of religious studies, and religious studies is not indoctrination; it's about teaching about religion. And
we will have to talk about
it. Sunni Islam is very easy.
Okay.
Because it's the 5 pillars of Islam and all this sort of stuff. And but you see it from a Western perspective, and Western religion is dominated by Roman Catholicism. Even though I'm Anglican, therefore not Roman Catholic, but the concepts are Roman Catholic concepts. So that fasting, for instance, is about suffering. You're there to suffer. There is this sort of strong masochistic tendency in Western Christianity that comes out of Roman Catholicism. And so when I was teaching kids about Ramadan, I said, well, this is a fast, this is a solemn time. I then go and live in Syria. And I lived in a busy shopping street. And in Ramadan, in the evening, well, first of all, the day is shorter, the working day is shorter in Ramadan. So people don't work very hard because you can't. And
the same thing in Egypt.
Absolutely. And so suddenly, half an hour before sunset, the streets were empty, which meant I could get around quickly in my car. Then my street had lots of clothes shops. And at about 9 o'clock in the evening, the street, I mean, it was like a football crowd. It was. I mean, if I was coming from somewhere, my car, I couldn't park my car anywhere near. It was such fun. Now, fasting in Christianity isn't fasting part of the day and then having fun. And of course, I would go to iftar with friends of mine, and if Ramadan is about family and friends enjoying their eating together. So Ramadan isn't about, for me, isn't about not eating. It is about eating.
True.
It's just that you don't eat for party.
Specific time, yeah.
That's right. And so you eat and celebrate, and then you go shopping, and it's completely changed my view of what Ramadan is about. And if only I'd been teaching, having known that, I would have taught it very differently, I think. Because people want religion to be solemn and serious. And Ramadan, okay, it is solemn and serious, but with this, it's like there's a little bit of solemn and serious, and then there's so much joy and happiness and fun. And I loved Ramadan. Of course, I wasn't fasting, so it made it easier. Yeah.
Okay, one more question.
Okay.
All right. So I know that you've been reading a lot about Arabic books.
Yeah.
Most probably translated or actually translated.
Yeah.
So can you mention some authors you love or you enjoy reading to? On what kind of books you read?
Right. I find reading. Well, first of all, Islam doesn't have theology in the way that we have theology in the West. It's a very different approach. But I have enjoyed studying some Arabic thinkers. But I particularly enjoy reading things like Ibn Battuta in translation. And especially, I've been to India, South India a lot, and he gets shipwrecked in South India and stuff like this. And you suddenly have this connection of here he is, hundreds of years ago, doing these journeys. But also, I really like Mahfouz, Naguib Mahfouz.
Naguib Mahfouz in Egypt?
Najib, yeah.
Najib
but I really enjoy his some of the stuff that I read. The Palace trilogy, certainly the first two books are very powerful. And especially if you're British, because the background is the British occupation. And I have no qualms about seeing this as a catastrophe for the world. But it's always good to read what other people how they respond. But just understanding how middle class or merchant class Cairo was in the beginning of the 20th century, going into people's homes. He writes so brilliantly about that. Yes, I enjoy reading that sort of stuff.
Do you still remember which book, the last book you have read?
Palace Walk, I think, but it's a couple of years
Bain
ago.
al-Qasri?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
All right.
But there's so much to read, and of course I read a lot of Western writers on the Arab world, and some. I did some research in Newcastle on Gertrude Bell. Gertrude Bell was a significant British woman at the beginning of the 20th century who helped create Iraq after the First World War, and she travelled down the Euphrates and up the Tigris in 1909. A woman, and she on another journey she went to Hale in Saudi Arabia and got kidnapped, and she was a very important person, and I loved reading her stuff. And she was another person who absolutely loved being in the Arab world, spoke good Arabic, and when there were negotiations about what to do with Mesopotamia that became Iraq. She knew all the tribal sheikhs in the region, because that was the sort of person she was. And although I don't agree with her on lots of things, I think she also has this love and passion for the Arab world. but I was lucky because I mean, she would meet with important people, whereas I lived in an ordinary street in Damascus and had neighbours and friends who were just normal Syrians, and just normal people, and yes, I've gone off the subject now of books, but a good book will understand the society. There is a terrible book called Cleopatra's Wedding Present, which was written in the 90s by a British writer who goes to Aleppo, and somebody offers him a bed in his house, and he stays there, and he says, "Well, I must leave you tomorrow." And they say, "No, you must stay." And of course, what he doesn't understand is he doesn't mean you must stay.
Just invitation.
That's right. And so he keeps on staying.
Ah.
And I think one of the great things about Syria is people will say, "Oh, you must stay," and they don't mean it. But if you do stay, that's okay. But they don't really mean it. And it's like you walk down the street and somebody's eating a sandwich, falafel, and they'll say, "Fadal, please have it." They don't want you to have it, but if you had a bite, that would be fine. But they don't mean it. And the awful thing about this Cleopatra's Wedding Present book is he did not understand the culture. Which is very sad.
Cool. So, is there anything before we end the video? Is there anything you'd like to share? Something you'd like to talk about? Something you love? Something maybe you didn't appreciate in being in the Arabic world? If not, it's okay.
Of course, the main part was in Syria, and if I had known the catastrophe that Putin and Assad and the Iranians were going to wreak on Syria, I'd have taken a lot more photographs. Because stuff has gone. And but I think what I do, the thing that I love about the Arabic world is the people. I've just had so many people who I have liked a great deal and loved a lot.
I used to, many people told me before that there's a big difference, or a huge, massive difference between being in Europe and being in an Arab. For example, the warmth you have in your heart. I'm not quite sure if the weather plays a role in it, or just how people kind and warm. Have you experienced that before?
I think that the Arab world that I know best, which goes from Egypt around up to Antakya, really, is Mediterranean. And I think Arabs are Mediterranean people. Your sort of Arab, my sort of Arab, are Mediterranean people, not the Khalijis. And I think that culture of the Mediterranean, which connects, because the Mediterranean is a road, and I think the warmth that you're talking about is actually a Mediterranean warmth, and the further north you get, the colder it is. But in Britain, people will say if you're in the south of England, especially London, people are very cold, they have no time. But the further away you get from the capital, the warmer and nicer people are. So I think to define Europe as a single thing is as foolish as defining the Arab world as a single thing. But I've certainly been enriched greatly by my experiences there.
So Azizi Stephen, Azizi.
Yeah, Muallim.
So here in Germany, people say Zeit vergeht so schnell. In English, you say time flies. So here we come to the end of the video. It's about more than 1 hour. I really appreciate you coming and visit me in Germany, generally, and in Marburg. I wish you appreciate the city and you admire it. And of course, I invite every single person to come to this city. And of course, if it happens and you're here in Marburg, please come over and let's talk more about the Arab world, the language. You don't have to be an expert in the Arabic language. You don't have to be an expert in the Arab world. Just if you relate to it in a way or another emotionally, if you have many friends, if you have something you'd like to talk about related to the Arab world, you can contact me anytime, and I would love to have a long, long talk that I had with my Azizi Stephen.
على راسي.
على راسي.
Thank you.
مع السلامة.
الله يسلمك.